Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are going to do something a little dangerous. We're either going to take a sledgehammer to the foundation of your childhood.
It's a heavy one today, for sure. We are looking at the institution where you and I, and probably almost everyone listening, spent the first 20 years of their life.
School.
Oh.
And we're not talking about the usual complaints, homework, heavy backpacks, maybe bad cafeteria food. We are asking a much darker, much more fundamental question. Is the education system actually designed to make you smarter, or is it a tool for hegemony? Is it actually designed to control you?
And it sounds like a conspiracy theory when you just say it out loud like that. It really does. It sounds like something you'd find on a deep internet forum late at night.
Right.
But when you actually look at the source material we have in front of us today, I mean, specifically the lecture by Dr. Rasheed Arshad, and then you cross-reference that with Gauri Viswanathan's Masks of Conquest and John Taylor Gatto's Weapons of Mass Instruction, the answer is, well, it's genuinely unsettling.
We're talking about a fundamental shift in how human beings define knowledge itself. So the mission for this deep dive is to uncover the mask of this system, to understand how our consent was manufactured, and, crucially, to look at the roadmap Dr. Arshad provides for how an individual can actually escape this.
And that roadmap it's radical. I mean, it requires unlearning almost everything we've been taught to assume about what success even means.
So let's start at the beginning, or maybe the Great Shift, as Dr. Arshad calls it. He argues that before we can even begin to understand schools, we have to understand the definition of knowledge. He draws this very clear line in the sand between the traditional view and the modern view.
Right, and this is the philosophical bedrock for the entire discussion. If we look at pre-modern civilizations, and Dr. Arshad focuses a lot on the Islamic tradition, but he's quick to point out this was common across most spiritual or pre-modern societies, knowledge was defined as nur.
Nur, and that translates to light, right?
Right. It does, yes. But it's important not to think of it like a light bulb. It's not just illumination. Think of it as illumination of the soul. In the traditional view, the whole purpose of knowledge was to know the divine, to understand your place in the cosmos. It was a path.
A path to what?
To becoming a moral, an ethical being.
So knowledge was all about internal transformation. You learned things to become a better person.
Exactly. Knowledge was a form of worship. It was meant to create God consciousness. The metaphor he uses is that it polishes the mirror of the heart. So the end goal of education wasn't getting a job.
It was character.
It was character. The educated man was synonymous with the good man.
Okay, it sounds beautiful, if a little idealistic from our modern perspective. But then we hit the 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, and everything changes.
This is where modernity kicks in. And this is really the crux of Dr. Arshad's entire argument. As Europe moved through the Renaissance and into the Enlightenment, the definition of knowledge became, well, it became material. It was stripped of the metaphysical.
It lost the light.
It lost the light and it gained utility. Knowledge became about power, about control, about extraction. It became about what you can do with the information to manipulate the physical world or, to manipulate the people in it.
Dr. Arshad brings up the French philosopher Michel Foucault here.
Yeah.
Now, Foucault can be pretty dense. Let's try to break this down. What's his specific insight on this shift that's relevant here?
Right. So Foucault argued that modernity is fundamentally about discipline, but there's a deeper philosophical break that he identified. The whole modern worldview is that humanity has, quote, come of age.
Come of age. What does that mean?
It's the idea that, we don't need God anymore. We can determine truth for ourselves. We can determine morality for ourselves. We are self-sufficient. Humanity has grown up and left the nest.
Okay, so in the traditional view, I learn things to align myself with a higher, pre-existing truth. But in the modern view, I learn things to master the world and enforce my own will upon it.
Precisely. And in that modern view, if a piece of knowledge doesn't have a clear utility, if it doesn't help you build a bridge or fire a gun or increase the GDP, it's seen as
useless.
It's seen as useless, a waste of time.
And Dr. Arshad's point is that this new theory of knowledge didn't just stay in the salons of Europe, it was exported. And British India was the laboratory where this theory was first tested on a mass scale.
A laboratory is the perfect word for it. It really is. When you dig into the colonial archives, the British reports explicitly discuss something they called useful knowledge. And they were faced with a problem. What to do with the existing educational systems in India? The madrasas, the
What
pathshalas,
was their verdict on all that traditional learning?
useless. All of it. The poetry, the ethics, the Sanskrit, Arabic, Persian literature, the British reports, the documents themselves explicitly state that these things were of no value because they didn't serve the colonial structure of utility and power. They didn't help the East India Company run a bureaucracy or manage tax collection, so they had to go.
This is a perfect pivot point to talk about Masks of Conquest by Gauri Viswanathan, because the British had a serious problem. They couldn't just rule by the sword forever. That's expensive, it's messy, it's inefficient.
Exactly. They needed to rule the mind.
And Viswanathan, she's a professor at Columbia. Her analysis here is just brilliant. She argues that the British were facing a paradox. They wanted to project themselves as a superior civilized civilization. That was their whole justification. But they couldn't actually teach their core political values to the Indians.
Right, because their big political values were things like liberty, freedom, democracy.
Exactly. You can't teach the slogan, "Give me liberty or give me death," to the people you are actively occupying.
No, because they might take you up on it.
They might stand up and say, "Okay, sounds good, give us liberty." It's just far too dangerous.
So you can't teach them political freedom, but you have to teach them something that makes you look superior and justifies your rule. What's the solution? What do you do?
You teach them English literature? That seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You're saying Shakespeare and Milton were used as weapons of war.
It sounds strange to us now, but you have to think about the psychology of it. If you can't offer them political freedom, you offer them what you claim is cultural superiority. You teach English studies to create a mask, and that mask makes the whole conquest look like a benevolent, civilizing mission.
So you're not being oppressed, you're being elevated.
You're being elevated into the high culture of your masters. It's a gift.
It's the othering process. You create a psychological gap between the ruler and the ruled.
Yes. The ruler possesses this high, complex, supposedly universal culture. Hamlet, Macbeth, Paradise Lost, and the ruled.
Yeah.
Well, the ruled are told that their own culture is just barbarism, superstition, or at best, quaint local folklore.
There's a quote Dr. Arshad mentions from the poet Akbar al-Abadiyat that just sums this up so perfectly. He said something like, "If they teach us full knowledge, we would thank them."
That is such a key insight. Allah-Habadi is saying, look, if they actually taught us the hard stuff, science, technology, engineering, the things that create real power in the world, we would be grateful for that.
But they didn't.
But they didn't, at least not initially. They pushed literature, culture, and language.
They wanted mental subordination, not intellectual equals.
Correct. Think about it. If you teach a man how to build a steam engine, he can build his own steam engine. But if you teach him to admire your poetry, he learns to admire you.
That is the mask. The gun is hidden behind the book.
Exactly.
This is chilling because it suggests that the entire humanities curriculum at its root wasn't designed to make people more humane. It was designed to make them more submissive.
In that colonial context, yes.
But that's just the curriculum. Dr. Arshad goes deeper. He attacks the very structure of the school itself. And this is where we have to bring in John Taylor Gatto.
Weapons of mass instruction. Gatto is a legend in the field of educational critique. This was a man who was an award-winning teacher in New York State for 30 years. And he eventually quit his job.
You just quit.
He quit, and he famously said he didn't want to hurt kids anymore.
Hurt them? Hurt them how?
By processing them. Gatto connects modern schooling directly to the Prussian model, a system developed in Prussia, which is modern-day Germany, in the 18th century. And it was designed explicitly for state control, not for individual flourishing.
And there's this one figure that Dr. Arshad highlights from Gatto's research that, it really drives this whole point home. A man named James Bryant Conant.
This detail should absolutely stop you in your tracks. James Bryant Conant was the president of Harvard University for 20 years, a pillar of the American academic establishment.
Okay.
But before that, during World War I, he was a specialist in developing poison gas.
Poison gas.
And if that's not enough, in World War II, he was a key executive on the Manhattan Project.
The atomic bomb.
The atomic bomb.
So, the man running Harvard, the pinnacle of American education, was also a key figure in the machinery of mass destruction.
Gatto's point, and Dr. Arshad really emphasizes this, is that this is not a coincidence. It represents a mindset. The same kind of mind that oversees mass destruction is the same kind of mind that oversees mass instruction.
It's about engineering.
It's about engineering populations. It's about managing large groups of people as if they're chemical compounds in a lab.
Engineering people, not educating them.
Right. See, in the traditional model, you had a kind of triangle. The parent, the child, and the teacher. The teacher was really an extension of the parent's will, helping to raise the child according to the family's values.
And in the modern model,
In the modern model, the teacher is replaced by the state.
the state takes over that role. And the state has very, very different goals than a parent does.
Totally different goals. A parent wants their child to be happy, to be moral, to be independent. The state, on the other hand, needs citizens who pay taxes, follow laws, and fill labor shortages. Those are not the same goals at all.
Not even close.
So Gatto, referencing an earlier educator named Alexander Inglis, lists 6 primary functions of modern schooling. And I want to warn you and our listeners, none of these are to make you smart or to help you find your true self.
Okay, let's run through these because this feels like the code behind the matrix. Function number 1, the adjustive function.
This is all about reflex. It's about training students to react reflexively to authority without thinking. A bell rings, you move. You're told to sit down, you sit down. You need a hall pass to go to the bathroom as a teenager.
It's bypassing critical thought.
It's about creating a habit of obedience to external commands. It is Pavlovian conditioning, plain and simple.
It is. You're training the organism to respond to the system's stimuli. Wow. Okay. Function number 2, the integrating function.
We usually call this the melting pot, and we're taught to think of that as a good thing, everyone holding hands and singing songs. But Gatto says it really means making everyone alike. It's about sanding down your unique cultural or individual edges so you fit neatly into the machine as a predictable, manageable cog. It is the manufacturing of conformity.
Number 3, the diagnostic function.
This is the sorting hat from Harry Potter, but without any of the magic. It's the school's job to determine a student's proper social function.
It diagnoses you.
It diagnoses where you fit in the social and economic hierarchy, who is destined to be a worker, who will be a manager, who will be a soldier, and then it starts the process of keeping you there. It's a polite way of saying learning your place.
Which leads directly to function number 4, doesn't it? The differentiating function.
Exactly. Once you've been diagnosed, you are differentiated. You are trained only as much as is necessary for your predetermined role in the labor market. You don't teach a future laborer how to govern or how to read complex financial documents.
You teach them how to labor.
You teach them how to labor. This is why, Gatto argues, things like financial literacy or contract law aren't taught in most high schools. They don't want you to know the rules of the game. They just want you to play your assigned position.
Yeah, that is deeply cynical.
Yeah.
But when you look at it that way, it's hard to argue with. Okay, number 5, the selective function.
This is the dark side of Darwinism applied to children in a classroom. It's about creating a system of natural selection. You tag the unfit, which often means the nonconformists, the kids who learn differently, the creative ones who ask too many questions, and you filter them out.
Wow.
You taint them with bad grades or behavioral issue labels so they don't rise to positions of power within the system.
And finally, number 6, the propedeutic function. That's a mouthful.
It's a very fancy word for a simple idea. Creating a specialized guardian class. The system teaches a tiny fraction of people just enough to manage the system itself. But, and this is a really key point, even they aren't taught to be broad, independent thinkers.
Yeah.
No. They're taught to be effective specialists, doctors, lawyers, engineers. They become the loyal guardians of the state apparatus.
So, if we accept Gatto's premise here, the entire system is designed from the ground up to create human resources, not humans.
Precisely. And this leads us to the biggest question of all. Why do we accept this? If the system is designed to prune us down, to make us conform, why do we voluntarily send our kids there every day? Why do we value it so highly?
This is where we have to get into the concept of hegemony.
Antonio Gramsci's concept, yes. It is absolutely crucial to understand the difference between dominion and hegemony.
Dominion is the boot on the neck, right? That's the simple version.
That's a simple version, yeah. Dominion is force. It's the police, armies, prisons. The French Marxist Louis Althusser called this the repressive state apparatus. The gun.
But you can't rule people forever with just a gun.
You can't. It's too expensive. It breeds resentment. It's incredibly unstable. Sooner or later, people fight back.
So you need hegemony.
You need hegemony. Hegemony is consent. It's when the conquered group agrees that the conqueror is superior. It's when you control the culture, the ideas, the definition of what's normal. Althusser called this the ideological state apparatus.
The school, the media, the curriculum.
The professor, not the gun.
Dr. Arshad brings up a really fascinating piece of research here by a Dr. Nasir Abbas Nayar. He looked at British-era textbooks in India to see how this actually worked on the ground.
Yes, this is a perfect illustration. Nair analyzed the textbooks used in schools during the British Raj, and he found that every single textbook, it didn't matter if it was for math, history, or learning to read, every single one started with a picture of Queen Victoria.
Every single one.
Everyone. And it would have text praising her justice, her benevolence, her greatness.
It's subliminal messaging.
It's not even subliminal, it's explicit. And at the same time, the rest of the text would ridicule local history. It would portray the previous native rulers, the Mughals or others, as incompetent, tyrannical, or just backward.
So if you're a 7-year-old kid reading this every day, the message is crystal clear. The British saved us from ourselves, we were savages, and they brought order and civilization.
That is the soft power trap. That is hegemony. It works when you internalize the inferiority. You start to believe that your own language, your clothes, your history, your food are less than. You start correcting your own children for acting too native.
And Dr. Arshad brings up a very controversial figure here to illustrate this point perfectly. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan. Now, in many history books in South Asia, he's hailed as a great reformer, a modernist, but in this analysis, he's a case study in successful hegemony.
It's a fascinating and I think a very critical look. Sir Syed is famous for pushing Muslims in India to learn English and adopt Western education to get ahead, but Dr. Arshad quotes him explicitly. He quotes Sir Syed thanking Lord Macaulay, the very architect of this colonial education system, and literally praying for the eternal rule of the British.
Praying for eternal rule, that sounds like Stockholm Syndrome on a civilizational scale.
In a way, it is. Sir Syed genuinely believed that the British brought peace and useful knowledge. He argued that opposing them was a sign of backwardness. Dr. Arshad uses this to show what he calls the subaltern mindset. This isn't just a clever political strategy by Sir Syed. It's a genuine belief that progress can only happen if you abandon your native identity and adopt the conqueror's ways entirely.
He genuinely believed that his own culture was a dead end.
Exactly. He accepted the diagnosis of the conqueror, and that is total hegemony. That's when the prisoner falls in love with the prison because he's been convinced it's a palace.
Wow. Okay, let's pause here and survey the damage. We have established that the system is built on a fundamental shift from knowledge as light to knowledge as power. We've established it's a mask for conquest. We've seen the 6 functions of the schooling machinery designed to create conformity, and we've seen how we are psychologically conditioned to love it.
It's a pretty grim picture when you lay it all out like that.
It is. It really is. But Dr. Arshad doesn't just leave us in the dark. He offers an escape plan, a guide for individual action. And I really want to get into this because it's quite radical, and honestly, some of it seems really, really difficult to implement in the modern world we live in.
It has to be radical because it requires going against the grain of the entire society. You cannot escape a system while still trying to win its game and seek its approval.
Okay, so the first step he mentions is all about the early years, and I think this is going to upset some parents.
Reclaiming the early years. Dr. Arshad is very firm on this. His advice is, do not send your children to the system for the first 6 or 7 years of their lives.
No preschool, no kindergarten. I mean, in this economy, parents are working 2 jobs. For many, school is basically childcare.
And he acknowledges the difficulty. He really does. But he argues the cost of not doing it is much, much higher in the long run. His logic goes right back to that original concept of nur, or light. He argues that these formative years are for character building, for emotional stability, for deep family bonding. This is when the moral foundation of a human being is laid.
So the argument is, if you outsource this crucial period to the state, you're allowing the adjustive function of the school, the Pavlovian bells, to take hold before the child even has a firm sense of who they are.
Exactly. You are teaching them to listen to a bell before they've even learned to listen to their own conscience.
But people worry. I can hear them now. They think, if I don't send my kid to school at 4, they'll fall behind.
Dr. Arshad addresses that directly. He asks a simple question. Fall behind in what? The early years don't require a complex, state-mandated curriculum. He says it requires time, love, and exposure to good stories and morals at home. You can teach a child to read at home. You can teach them to count. But the primary goal is to protect their innate nature, their fitra in the Islamic tradition, from being institutionalized and damaged too early.
Okay, so step 1, homeschooling, or at least home-centric learning for the early years. Let's move to step 2. This one attacks the holy grail of modern parenting, the university degree.
Step 2 is questioning the degree cult.
Oh, this hits home for so many people. The idea that you must have a university degree to be a valid, successful member of society.
Dr. Arshad points to the hard data. He mentions, for example, Punjab University in Pakistan struggling to fill seats in certain departments. And you see this trend globally. Why? Because people are slowly waking up to the fact that 16 years of education, getting a master's degree, is no longer a guarantee of a livelihood. The utility of the modern degree is collapsing before our eyes.
We see it everywhere. Degrees are more expensive than ever, and the wages for graduates are stagnant. So if the degree isn't the golden ticket anymore, what's the alternative, he proposes?
He advocates for a pivot away from status education and toward cause.
Cause. What does that mean?
Cause is an Urdu word that means skills, a trade, or earning a livelihood through craftsmanship or a specific competence.
And this brings us right to step 3, the return to apprenticeship.
He calls it the Memon model, which refers to the very business-savvy Memon community in South Asia. The idea is incredibly simple. You get basic literacy in math, maybe up to a 10th grade level, and then at age 12, 13, or 14, you go straight into learning a practical trade.
12 or 13. That sounds incredibly young to our modern ears. We're talking about a 7th grader?
It does sound young to us now because we're so used to the modern system, but historically, that's when people started learning their craft. Whether it's accounting, coding, carpentry, plumbing, or learning the family business. The idea is to stop warehousing kids in classrooms until they're 24, listening to abstract theories, and instead get them engaging with the real world much, much earlier.
It's about building agency. A person with a tangible skill, a trade, they can often work for themselves. A person with a generic degree usually has to beg for a job in a corporate hierarchy.
Exactly. It's a direct escape from dependency on the system. If you know how to do something valuable, you can feed yourself. If you only know how to submit assignments on time, you need a boss to tell you what to do.
This leads right into step 4, which feels more internal, more philosophical. Rejection of rat race values.
This is the mental escape, and it might be the hardest part. You have to consciously understand that the modern definition of success, endless career climbing, consumerism, status symbols, is a trap. It's the bait that keeps you running on the wheel.
Dr. Arshad says we need to stop viewing the oppressor's culture as the standard we have to live up to.
Yes, if you spend your entire life trying to catch up to a standard that was set by a system designed to exploit you, you will always be running and you will always be behind. The only real escape is to stop and say, I am setting my own definition of success. I'm defining it by moral quality, by the strength of my family, by my connection to the divine, not by my job title or the car I drive.
Now, there is a nuance here I want to make sure we clarify. Is Dr. Arshad saying we should reject science? Is he saying we should all go back to living in caves and ignoring technology? Because that's how this can be misinterpreted.
No, absolutely not. And this is a crucial distinction he makes. He explicitly says this is not about rejecting science or technology. He notes that Muslims historically excelled in algebra, astronomy, and medicine. That was never the issue.
Right, the golden age of Islamic science.
But, and this is the big but, it is about rejecting the materialistic worldview that often comes packaged with modern science. You can learn the skill of engineering without buying into the philosophy that man is just a biological machine. You can learn medicine without believing that death is the absolute end of existence and that there's nothing more.
So it's about stripping the ideology away from the tool. You can use the tool, but you don't have to worship the toolbox.
That's a perfect way to put it. It is about reevaluating useful knowledge. In the colonial system, useful meant useful for the British Empire. In this new paradigm, useful should mean useful for our lives, our families, and our souls.
So if we zoom all the way out, this is really a call to reclaim autonomy on every level. Personal, familial, intellectual.
Absolute autonomy. The modern state wants to raise your children to be human resources, assets to be managed, taxed, and deployed for the economy. You presumably want to raise them to be moral humans, free thinkers with deep character. Dr. Arshad's core message is that these two goals are often in direct conflict, and you cannot expect the state's machinery to produce the result that you want for your family.
You have to build that result yourself, outside of the machine.
Through the home, through mentorship, through independent thinking, and ultimately through refusing to play the game by their rules anymore.
It's incredibly empowering, but it's also daunting. It puts all the responsibility squarely back on the individual and the family. There's no system that's going to save you. You have to save yourself from the system.
That is the price of freedom.
So let's try to wrap this up. We've journeyed from the light of traditional knowledge to the power of modern hegemony. We've seen the masks of conquest, the poison gas specialists behind the Ivy League presidents, and the subtle brainwashing of our childhood textbooks.
And we've seen that the exit door is unlocked. It's right there. But you have to be willing to actually walk through it. You have to be willing to look different, act different, and educate your children differently than everyone around you.
I'm going to leave our listeners with one final thought, something to chew on that builds on all this. Dr. Arshad talks a lot about the past, about how this system was built for an industrial age. But think about the future. Right now, artificial intelligence is now entering the chat.
Oh, that's a whole new layer to this, isn't it?
It is. If the current school system was designed to create cogs for an industrial machine, people who can follow instructions, do repetitive tasks, and conform, what happens when AI can do all of that 1,000 times better, faster, and cheaper than any human ever could?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The adjustive and integrating functions of school are literally creating workers for a world that is rapidly disappearing.
Exactly. So if you follow the modern path today, you might actually be training your children for obsolescence. But if you follow that traditional path that Dr. Arshad is talking about, developing character, morality, unique human insight, that light inside, well, that is the one thing a machine can never, ever replicate.
So, ironically, the old way might be the only way to survive the future.
The escape route might just be the only real path forward.
It's a huge paradox, but I think you're right.
Thank you for diving deep with us today. This was a heavy one, but hopefully it sparked a little bit of light.
Until next time.
Check your sources, question the narrative, and we'll see you in the next deep dive.